What's going on, everybody? Troy Rawlings here, and welcome to another exciting episode of Meet the. And today I got it's Meet the Songwriter, to DJ. I don't know what order we're doing this in. Record label owner, music mogul. You are actually a music.
If you say so.
It's in there. All right. DJ Spen, the humble man, DJ Spen.
How you doing, man? Man, not too much. Just trying to, I guess, not even really trying to, living in a situation that's crazy. Again, trying to make sense of it makes no sense in a lot of ways.
Let me tell you, for those who don't know, if you're watching this at a later date, this is June 2020. So if you look in your history books later on, you'll see that we had quarantine, worldwide quarantine. And after that, a worldwide uprising against police brutality, Black Lives Matter. It's like they say, the best of times and the worst of times. Some people say, how can it be the best of times? Because change is revolution. And that's the nature of a record player. Transition.
Yeah.
Change is revolution. So and we're in the midst of that. And I'm gonna go back. We're gonna jump right in. I'm gonna go back first, and then I'm gonna talk about because I don't know where we would be, period, without music right now. I remember going to recently I went to Jesse Jackson's a couple years back now, 75th, and they talked about it was Rainbow Push and Jesse Jackson's 75th birthday, and Berry Gordy was there, and he had mentioned a number of things that you don't think about, and he said Motown was the music of the movement, and I thought in my head, I was like, yeah, every time I saw something about Vietnam or anything, anything, somebody run down the street, it was everything. He said Motown was the music of the movement. Not only that, Berry Gordy donated a lot of money into the civil rights movement. There was times Dr. King couldn't pay his staff. And he said, well, there's a guy in Detroit that gives money to the movement. Why don't you go talk to him? And you know what I'm saying? So he was telling these stories. I was like, you don't think about what we're doing now and how we're coming together. Yeah, it's more of a global thing, but we don't realize that time does repeat itself and is necessary for change. So it's a serious thing. But what's so crazy is that you and I got to give you roses while you're still alive and kicking and healthy. But for me, being a b-boy kid and I was a house head, always been a house head. I remember when I could go to Ricetown Road Plaza and you were managing Metro, the record store, and you would be in there. So I come in there, I was like, I want some underground house. I started going to Club Fantasy when I was 13.
Right.
Wasn't supposed to be in there, but you could do the old. As long as you had dirt on your lip, looked a little tall, had the flamboyant shirt on. I was like, my wallet's in the car, and it was like, we ain't gonna make you walk back to the car. Just go and go. But I remember I'd be like, I want some underground. You'd be like, all right, come back in 90 minutes. Spen would mix the tape live, and I would come back, and he would just be rocking stuff. He'd still be mixing, and he'd look. He's like, "Oh, yeah," and he'd take because the tape already stopped, so he'd take the tape out and write everything on it and stuff like that. Yo, those tapes went around the world because my brother started jacking me for him when he was in the military.
All right.
You were the first one I heard do a Roger. You did a mix with Searchin' and Roger Harris doing comedy over it. Not Roger. Roger Harris, the comedian. Robin Harris. Comedian Robin Harris.
Right, Robin Harris.
Over it. And he jacked my tape. And I was like, can you send me my tape back? He said, oh, yeah, I'm going to get it back to you. He was in the military, traveling the world.
Yeah, those tapes, you probably never saw that tape again, did you?
Ever. Especially me being one of the
military cats were.
Oh my God. Yeah. I remember getting you to you don't, like I said, you might not, it might have just been second nature to you. I was like, hey, they looking for DJs to do Milford's Dance, and some happened to one of the DJs. I think you'd be great to do the dance, and I think you already knew Mixmaster T and them, and I talked to them about it. Next thing I know, you would DJ one of Milford's parties. You know what I'm saying? So it was that kind of thing when you see somebody in that light. And of course, I didn't know the previous history about you with Numarx.
Right.
Let's go back. When did you start? When did you realize that you wanted to be involved with music?
Oh, geez. It's probably easier just to tell you when I started. So I was in the, I guess, early 80s. I'd always been in my basement, man, just playing around with a pause button tape deck. And, I had a little mixer that I probably coerced my mother to buy for me somehow, some way. But my brothers left a ton of music, and they left like a turntable, and I had it was literally like a boom box. I had a pause button on it, and I would take records and sort of like extend my favorite parts and put them together. The next thing I knew, man, when I started high school, and I would come home from Mount St. Joe and sit down and listen to WEBB, which was, a limited sort of daytime radio station. When the sun went down, EBB was off. So if the sun went down, if it was wintertime, the sun went down at 5:30, EBB was off. We get a good one during the summer, because sometimes in the summer they wouldn't cut off till 7. But anyway, this is wintertime. So they were going off at 5:30, man, and I would rush home from school, man, no matter what was going on, just to go check it out. And I heard this mix by these cats called the AP Crew. And come to find out that, they said they were from New York. Come to find out later, they really weren't. They were just some cats out of Columbia, Maryland, that traveled to New York and did some stuff. But long story short, man, they did this mix of Houdini's Magic Wand. And I was just like, yo, what are these cats doing? They were mixing records on top of records. It's all in Mr. Magic. It's all in Mr. I was like, what is going on? So I went downstairs and I started messing around with some stuff. And I was like, I can do what they're doing. I just kind of put one together. And I begged my mom to take me up to WEBB to give a tape to Randy Dennis, a cassette tape to Randy Dennis. And I remember vividly, man, kind of walking in with my little Catholic school stuff on, me and my mom, and Randy Dennis looking, kind of like, it was 1982, but a lot of the cats still looked like they was pimped out from the 70s and whatnot.
Right.
And he kind of walked in and he said, "What you got there, man? What you got?" And I told him, "Man, I got a tape. Check it out. Tell me what you think about it." He was like, all right, man, I'm going. We can check it out. And, I'll call you. Never expected a call, right? The next day, I didn't get a call, right? Next day, I came home from school, and my usual turn on WEBB, sit down, chill out, let's see what they playing. And he played my mix on the radio. And I immediately called the station and said, yo, you actually played my mix on the radio. He's like, yo, you the young dude that bought the tape in yesterday? I was like, yeah. He's like, cool. What's the name of your crew? I said, oh my God. So I looked at my Numarx mixer and I said, the Numarx. He said, all right, we got the Numarx, blah, blah, blah. And that was the beginning. It was an uphill battle from there, but that truly was the beginning.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm. Deadly serious.
A lot of times, I gotta say this because, Randy Dennis was one of the people. It cut to him going to V103 starting.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the end of it, and like you said, it catch because I think Frank was over there for a while doing the master mix. Didn't he?
Yeah, man. Frank was at V103. It was really interesting.
I mean, he was at what? Didn't he start at EBB at first? He
started at EBB. I was at EBB, man, when Frank first came. Now EBB was in Walbrook Junction, and then they moved over into Park Circle, and they had moved.
Well, for those who are not from Baltimore and don't know what WEBB James Brown owned WEBB, didn't he?
Yes, he did. James Brown owned
started the radio station
WEBB.
EBB.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
mm-hmm. Right. We Be Black Radio, as I think what he dubbed it as.
Now I got to play some James Brown on Black and I'm Proud, James. It still makes sense, James.
Still makes sense, James. That's right. Mm-hmm.
So Randy Dennis gave you broke it on the radio, because that's when you could really take stuff up to the station and you knew you had.
Yeah.
How did that feel? How did that feel? Because I guess it's different when you work and you're in the studio and you're a singer and you're doing stuff and you're doing it and they play your joint because you're singing it. But you took it the day before. The next day you come home and you heard your mix. What?
Yeah. Like I said, I didn't know what to think. It was kind of like I hit the ground running. God does this to me, man, like all the time. It's very interesting. And I think what God does with me is puts me in these situations where it can't be anything but him. I mean, seriously, I have one turntable and one boombox with a small mixer. That's all I had. I didn't have anything else. You talking about dudes, man, that had tape and splicing reel-to-reel tapes and, doing the stuff in studios. And I did that in my basement. So I think that was the beginning of God saying, hey, look at what I've given you the talent to be able to do.
Yeah. Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it or are you going to make excuses?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, right down to even coming up with the name, there was a mixer there. He said, what's the name of your crew? The Numarx crew. Okay.
It sounds right. It was like, he's looking around the studio seeing Numarx, not even knowing it.
Yeah, man. I mean, even at 13, I was like, man, Numarx is going to come after me because we stole their name. If anything ever happened with us, we in trouble.
You did a Kaiser Sose. You looked around.
Exactly. But never, Kaiser Sose. That's funny. Never, but that, I guess we never got to a point as the Numarx where we were, sort of a threat.
Let's talk about that, because all right, now years later, I'm in school. We're doing the music and we're doing the hip hop dance and we're choreography. We're doing just late 89. Now I graduated 93. Mm-hmm. So around, I can't remember when it came out, but you guys got together and did another project. Because you had North Avenue and
the first record that we did, that was us. So the first record that we did was this record called Bust It. It was terrible. We hated it, couldn't stand it. The next record that we ended up doing was this record called Rhyme So Deaf, which was kind of the baseline record for us creating what we created with Girl You Know It's True. We did that record for a label out of DC called Studio Records, owned by this cat named Steven Franco. Actually it was Oxon Hill, not really DC. But anyway, he was doing a lot of go-go records, and he had a guy named Mike Neal who was doing a lot of the engineering for him. So, we were able to kind of go in and work alongside Bill Pettaway, who was our producer at the time, who was from Annapolis. And that was a crazy situation because how we actually ended up working out with Bill, Kevin Lyles, myself, Wayne Mallory, which was 3 of the 5 members of the Numarx, were all working at this telemarketing agency. And it just so happened
Wayne told me this. I think Wayne told me that.
Yeah. It just so happened that one of the girls that worked with us was on the phone talking to Bill Pettaway, saying, trying to sell him a vacation. And the way Bill says it is, Bill was like, I do music. I ain't interested in buying no vacation. So the girls kind of got into a little bit of conversation with him. And Bill actually, I'm trying to work with these cats out of your area called the Numarx that'll be on that's on V103. And she said, "Oh, really? I work with him." He was like, "Nah, for real." So Kevin ends up getting on the phone with Phil. We end up setting up, We end up setting up a situation. We end up going down to Bill's house, and next thing you know, we're working on what ends up being the first Numarx album that included "Girl You Know It's True," "Rhyme So Deaf," "I'll Remember Your Name," and all of these other kind of little underground records that sort of did some damage here.
So for those that are watching now, those are watching. So yes, it's the Girl You Know It's True. Was the girl they wrote the Numarx. So at the time, was Wayne a part of the group?
Yes.
So Kevin Liles, who you may know from Def Jam and being in the music industry for years, DJ Spen, Wayne Mallory, and now Bill Pettaway.
Right. Bill Pettaway was our producer. There was Rodney Holloman, and who was Cool Rod, and Daryl Mims, who was Junie Jam. That ended up, at the time, we were 5 cats, and we worked on that album as a 5-man group.
So crazy. Was the arrangement that you did for "Girl You Know It's True" the same? Well, was it the bass the same arrangement? I mean, outside of the newer production in the UK field.
So what happened was we recorded the record. Full stop. If you listen to our version of "Girl You Know It's True" and you listen to the MILLI Vanilli version of "Girl You Know It's True," it's almost it's so similar, it's ridiculous.
Right. I've listened to it before, and I was like, yeah, that's him.
Yeah. So we originally did the record, and I think what happened was the record label that we were with was contacted by the guy Frank Farian, who originally produced the MILLI Vanilli version, and they were talking about how they could pick the record up for a label over there. Long story short, I think that our guy ended up talking himself out of the deal, and those guys recreated the record with MILLI Vanilli. Now, here's the difference. Everybody who knows MILLI Vanilli knows that they were 2 tall, black guys, long hair, that could dance and stuff. We were the total antithesis of that. We were trying to be Run DMC and LL Cool J.
Y'all see them
yeah. So
and then MILLI Vanilli's like,
right. We could have never.
We would have never done
couldn't
that.
Have. No. Not to say that we couldn't have pulled off something, but we couldn't have pulled it off to that degree.
Right.
So they literally remade the song, made it to fit what they were doing, and the rest is history.
So for those in the industry, because now I want to get into a little industry stuff and kind of work our way up, because like I said, we could easily talk for 3 hours and still not touch a lot of the things that happened between that point in time and even now. So when the record hit, you're listed, and I guess you guys did the right thing by way of publishing. You had publishing, right? You had the business. Now, who took you through that process? Because you go from being, how old were you when you first went to WEBB? How old were you?
13.
13. Numarx 13.
Yeah.
By the time you're 15, 16, where in the midst of it did you really get a good business sense of setting up your group, the entities, publishing, and all that stuff? Where did you really?
Girl You Know It's True had happened and passed by the time we figured out what the business was.
Right.
We ended up having to. We were managed by a company in Philadelphia at the time, but we ended up having to backtrack quite a bit to get everything straightened out. And, so we were able to, afford guys like Philip Asbury, who was the Philadelphia international lawyer, to kind of do all of the work and sort of help get that stuff straight. But we ended up doing okay. And but the business of it took us a minute to get it sort of straight. We were young, we didn't really know what we were doing, and they took advantage of a lot of that.
Right. Especially being from overseas and knowing it's almost like the cats that put together the boy bands. They know the business to a T. They just put people to fit it. So they knew exactly what they wanted to do. And they knew exactly getting two guys that they have a look, they're rapping, they're kind of this, but they look great, but they're kind of rapping, they're kind of singers, but they're entertainers.
Exactly.
Mold them into. Now, did the scandal help you guys?
Help?
As far as getting, did you already get
the question?
Did you already get monies and royalties before the scandal happened?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Regardless of whether the scandal happened or not, our part of it had literally nothing to do with anything, other than other than we wrote and produced and arranged the song before they had it. Everything else, and everything else that deals with reference to Milli Vanilli, we had nothing to do with.
Right. So, okay. So that happened. What year was that?
88.
88.
Must have been 80. Yeah, must have been 88. I think our version came out in must have been 86. I think their initial version that they did, which was on Cool Tempo, which was released in Germany, that came out 87, and it blew up big, man. 88, big, huge.
It was the biggest. It was they got the best new artist, right? Didn't they get
they got best new artists almost everywhere, man, almost across the board.
Yeah.
I think they got Song of the Year.
I
want to say they got Song of the Year.
Everything.
Yeah, but you got to think, I'm sitting back like, one of these plaques over here is one of those.
Right.
Was saying that, and at that time it was they had sold 5 million.
You see how he said one. he just straight up did a Barry Gordy. Yeah, one of these plaques.
Yeah. So that one represented 5,000. It was 5,000. It was at 5 million when we got that particular plaque. And I think that had to be late 87, early 88. It ended up, and I have another one of those somewhere. I just don't know where it is, but it ended up doing 13 million.
It went beyond Diamond.
Right. And it's way beyond that now. But at the time, even Stevie Wonder hadn't done 13 million of any particular song. So we were, we were like, okay, like what's happening?
Right.
I think we were just upset because it wasn't us.
Right. To give people a sense, Off the Wall had done 10 million.
Right.
Initially, of course now it's bananas, but initially 10 years prior to that, Off the Wall had did 10 million and nobody had really done that.
Right.
So, and that was Michael Jackson. So yeah, think about that. So, all right. So that hits. And around this time now, when did you start with the record store? Because there's a correlation with that I want people to see.
Oh, wow.
When did you start with Metro initially? Or was it Metro first, or did you start with one of the other ones? Because at that point in time, we had everything.
Well, I think you would, if you're talking Reisterstown Road, that's Metro 2.
Metro 2, right.
Right. So I'd been doing some things, especially in my off time, sometimes when they would need help during like Christmas holiday, or when one of either Tommy or Jerome couldn't be in, I would always kind of walk in and just help out with Tommy Davis and Jerome Hicks, right? So I would help them out at the Metro, the original Metro, which was in Mondawmin Mall, during those time periods. But I was still in school, in high school. So I probably started helping them out when I could, maybe right around then, 88. Excuse me, probably 88. And then when they opened Metro 2 and I had just kind of started college, I was like, okay, this would be okay. Go ahead and do that. Still get a little bit of income and start rolling. And once they had it and they established it, when I graduated out of college, I think it was kind of, I was doing like this really weird thing. Like I would go to go to the studio at like 7 or 8 at night, and then I would work at Magic 95.9 as an announcer from 12 to 6, which nobody knew that I was doing. So that would be from 12 a.m. to about 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. Go get a couple hours sleep, wake up at 10 a.m. and then I would be at Metro all day. Selling records. And then and repeat, rinse and repeat. So I would leave Metro at about 6 or 7, go do some Basement Boys stuff, doing pre-production. At the time I had stopped working with Numarx and had done some things with Basement Boys, and I would do a lot of their pre-production and setup work and things of that nature that they were doing, because they were like probably the first Baltimore producers that literally had 3 to 4 major label dealings at one time. So I was kind of helping them out with some songwriting, some pre-production work and that sort of thing. So I would do that from about 7 till about 10 or 11, get another hour sleep, go back to Magic 95.9 and do it all over again.
Now I want to go back just a step to how important was it for you to, even though it was like, what were you going to college for first off? What'd you get?
I graduated from college with a degree in English and a minor in mass comm.
Okay. Were you thinking about teaching, or were you thinking about law? What were you looking into?
Man, that was the thing. I came out of Mount St. Joe, went straight to college, and at the time, the school I was at didn't have a mass comm. Didn't even have a mass comm minor. So I was going for English because I loved English, man. English was my thing. And in the midst of all of it, and I'm gearing myself up to, be an English major, possibly teach. Next thing I knew, here they come up for mass comm. I'm like, cha-ching. I know that, man. I breezed right through those courses. Having been at WEBB and, doing things at V103, just went right through it, cut through that like it was Swiss cheese. So yeah, that's the idea was to probably teach, which would have been something that I actually didn't know where the music industry was going to take me at the time. I didn't expect necessarily to be here, but because of at that point the Numarx had broken up, the whole thing with MILLI Vanilli had kind of happened. It sort of ran its course, and I was thinking, let's think a little bit more practical here. What can we do, that you enjoy doing? But then, like I said, man, doing the whole radio station thing, and then that ended up turning into a situation where from Magic 95.9, which was owned at the time by Radio One, who had just purchased it. That came with 92Q, and with that, so I moved from Magic. At one point, I was doing Magic and 92Q, and they had Kiss in DC, which they had just acquired as well. So, man, oh boy. I mean, one Saturday night, I think, or a couple of Saturday nights, I was on Magic Live. 92Q was taped, was pre-recorded, and Kiss in DC was pre-recorded all at the same time. Just 7 to 12, all 3 stations.
So
nuts.
So this is a key thing, because I guess because you started with it so young, it was a love, and you went directly into a realistic business mode. Like, their cats in New York, they were rapping, doing the thing on the street, maybe doing some shows. All that happened before they ever got to the station. Your first introduction was, I can do that, and you're in the station, and then doing stuff with the station, and then working in the station. So, and that was great because you learned that animal, the beast of it. But you also said something key. You said after the MILLI Vanilli stuff and after kind of Numarx parted ways, you were like, well, let me be more practical.
Right.
So at that point in time, you didn't have a passion to say, man, I want to be this, because you had already done certain things? There wasn't a passion that said,
and you know what? That's a very interesting question. You know, Kevin Lyles and myself, we get into a little bit of, we've had some conversations about this. Kevin's way of looking at it was, okay, I'm gonna come right out of this, and you know, I'm seeing what's happened with the business side of the music industry. I want to be in that.
Right.
I think that for me, I've always wanted to be on the creative side of it, which kind of led me into doing what I was doing with the Basement Boys, doing pre-producing, songwriting, that kind of thing. Because you know, as the Numarx, we wanted to be in the forefront of things. You know, being out on the stage, being out on the road. You know, doing that sort of thing. But when that didn't sort of materialize, and I think again with MILLI VANILLI happening, it kind of took a lot of the steam out of what we were doing in kind of a way.
Because
you know, we kind of all grew up
to be in the forefront. You saw we did this work, but I never even thought about that side of it.
Yeah,
we were doing it to be us, and then these guys come. There's nothing like us. And then do all this stuff.
Man, you don't understand. I mean, we were getting, you know how Baltimore is, man. We were getting joked about, man, y'all let those dudes steal y'all records. Y'all let those dudes steal y'all record and do that. How come y'all not doing that? I'm like, how about it ain't us?
We could be politically correct right now, but I won't say the Morris Day thing from Purple Rain that you probably heard 1,000 times.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So
on very much on that level. Yeah, very much on that level. So, you know, it was kind of, you know, like I said, it was kind of bittersweet. And we ended up, of course, we ended up never really doing another album. I mean, we were so, just to give you an idea of how kind of crazy it was for us, we ended up trying to do a project like, I remember we were working on a whole completely different album, and we did a record called Girl, It Ain't True No More. That was kind of like very much NWA kind of style record. You know what I mean? We saying all kind of craziness, and and that stuff just never materialized. And I think some of that was some of our, to be honest, it was some of our better, more organic work that we had done as a group, but the stuff never saw the light of day. I may have like some tapes of that kind of thing, but I mean, the stuff never saw the light of day. And you know, as things would have it, it wasn't supposed to see the light of day. Right. And you know, but looking back at it now, you know, we were just kind of like, okay, we did okay, but at the end of the day, these guys kind of stole our thunder, and we're stealing our thunder. Like I said, it really didn't help with unifying the group as we got older and responsibilities started to kick in and life started to happen. You know, we ended up getting jobs and having to go to work, and you know, let's figure out, you know, what is life after being a teenager. So you know, those were the kind of things that we were all faced with. So you know, long story short, Kevin ended up being in one aspect of the business. I ended up being in a totally different aspect of the business. And my thought pattern was to try and absorb as much as I could, especially from being within the Basement Boys situation, about how to be an artist, what makes a successful artist versus what makes an unsuccessful artist. And you know, I tried several things. You know, I mean, most people will never know me for the things that I've done that had never made it, versus the things that I've done that you know has kind of gotten out there and you know been accepted worldwide.
I was just watching an interview with Jeff Bezos, and he said the exact same. It was like, well, you're just guy, and he was like, you don't know my failure. He said, you don't know the things that never made it. But
sure.
Here's the record store. How much were you able to learn? Because you were at Metro prior to you ever owning your own record label, right?
Oh yeah.
So what did you learn about the business there that helped you? Was Quantize the first, or did you have a part of Jasper Street as well?
Well, Jasper Street Company started at Basement Boys, and to be honest, it was sort of a brainchild of mine that ended up happening while I was at Basement Boys. So it grew into a situation that was, for lack of a better term, managed by Basement Boys.
Right.
Because again, it was just I'm in the studio one day, and Jay and Teddy weren't in town, and I had the studio to myself for an entire weekend. I said, okay, well, what are we going to do here? So I ended up calling most of the friends that I knew, Thomas Roberts, Vonita White, some, a couple of others, pulled them all in the studio and said, look, we're going to make a record about a feeling. Just go in and sing about how you feel, and we're going to put it together, and we're going to make a song called A Feeling. So we did it. And, again, I didn't think anything of it, man. But next thing I knew, everybody and their mother was playing this record. I'm like, okay, so here it goes. It's happening again. The thing that just goes off the cuff that I don't expect to go off the cuff. It was literally what I would call my first solo production. Was this record called A Feeling that I produced in 94, maybe, I think. And man, nothing like going on a dance floor and hearing, Tony Humphries or Louis Vega, all these characters just were pounding the heck out of this record that I put together in a weekend. And there you have it. So the Basement Boys Foundation was key to me learning what running a record label was going to be like, because not only was that my first production, it was the Basement Boys' first record under their own label, Basement Boys Records. So so I got, a firsthand experience just being sort of involved with, how a record is made from the creative side all the way through to the record going to the shelf. So that was a great experience, and I think I was with Basement Boys up through about 50 records. So
you were there when they did they did Crystal Waters Project?
I was, when they did Crystal Waters, we were just kind of dealing with the very end of the Numarx. So Crystal Waters,
right.
I guess that came out about 90,
right.
89, 90.
Right.
So I was around when they did it. Again, I was working with them as a producer, pre-producer, songwriter. I wrote a couple of records on Crystal's first album, kind of thing, as well as Alternate Tay's first album. So I was in the building when they did it, but they did it.
But still, along this, see, it's so funny because we throw around the word organic now so much, but just being in the hub in Baltimore, I tell people a lot about the nature of Baltimore because sometimes they only hear about the negative stuff about Baltimore, but it was the music scene. It was everything you're mentioning helped mold me and keep me together in some trying times in my life. Me coming up to, hey man, I just need a tape, man. It was like my man, I just need a tape, brother. Like, come back in 90 minutes, And I would take when I'd be like, yo, watch this. And I would bring people back and he was like, what is he doing? I was like, he's mixing it now. So
wow.
That the nature of working in the record store, the Basement Boys really taught you. You said so. You think the business. Was there anything key that you learned about the business? Because I want people to recognize that sometimes they get involved with certain things, and they're scared to intern. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, after everything with it, didn't Kevin initially take an internship with Def Jam?
Yeah. So he was an intern with Def Jam for a minute, and
yeah. Because he was running, I think he was running the street team at one point.
Yeah, he was doing. Yeah, talk about from the ground completely up. I mean, from the bottom. He just had I had no idea what he was doing at the time because, like I said, at that point, we had split. But from what I know, he was doing some promotions for a couple of labels. Next thing you know, he's doing promotion for Def Jam. And I think that led him to going up to New York and doing some things. And you got to understand, this thing with Kevin is quite an interesting story because Def Jam had quite a few really serious guys. Mike Kaiser,
Right.
I can't remember, a couple of other guys, man, who were like Def Jam staples.
Right. Was Lyor Cohen there too?
Lyor Cohen was there. I want to say he was there at the time, but
right.
I'm talking from kind of like the promotional level. There were a lot of guys, man, that all of a sudden when Kevin Liles comes on the scene, he just went boom right past him. And next thing I knew, I'm like, Kevin Liles is what? Of where?
I think it's something about the nature of Baltimore. It's like if you have an opportunity open for some people, if you have an opportunity open, you take it. It's like, let me go get this. If it's in front of me, I can get it. I can do that. You heard something on WEBB and said, wait, I can do that. Mm-hmm. And so fast forward, Jasper Street record comes out. I got a feeling it's hitting. Mm-hmm. It's still a thumping that. They still playing that. So I was listening to a guy. There's a guy named Ja Big. I think he's from Canada or something. I like listening to some of his mixes while I'm working. But I hear more of. I probably hear so much of your music or music that you influenced. When did you realize you had? Is there a certain sound that comes out of? Is it a Baltimore thing? Is it a little bit of basement voice thing? When did you realize? Because of course it definitely has it's always an uplifting tone about it. You don't no fear putting gospel lyrics in it, things like that. But there's a certain sound to your music that you produce. It almost, and it's funny because you could hear it in your mixes when you were mixing house music. So what is that happens? Is it something just, once again, organic? Or what?
Yeah.
How did that cultivate?
It's definitely an organic thing. If people hear Feeling Now, it's interesting. I do a Sunday morning gospel show since the pandemic has hit called the Pandemic Praise Party. And I played A Feeling during the Pandemic Praise Party. Now, I never looked at A Feeling as being a gospel record, but because it has so many gospel overtones, a lot of people have dubbed it, a gospel thing. And since I've done it, since I did that record, man, people have known me. At one point, it kind of got on my nerves. It was like, you ever hear this gospel house DJ named DJ Spen? And in the early 2000s, it had gotten to be a situation where people knew what gospel house was, and I think that it had it carried a overtone for me that a lot of people wouldn't hire me because my music was too happy, or he's playing gospel house stuff, and people really, a lot of people really weren't sort of into the message of it. And I think that kind of hindered me from doing certain things at the time. But I think I realized it in the late 90s that, we were carrying this kind of gospel sound to what we were doing. Because it was born. My mom was one of 13 children, and all of them, they would get together and they would travel around the little kind of towns that they lived in Virginia as the Moore sisters, her and like 3 of her other sisters, and they would go around as the Moore sisters, and my uncles and stuff would be playing the music, and it just, so it's kind of a natural thing for me. Again, another thing that was organic. And a lot of the Jasper Street Company records, since we started with A Feeling, and then A Feeling sort of led into a record called Solid Ground, which was another kind of big record overseas. And it amazed me, man, with Solid Ground, because Solid Ground was a hit in France. When I say like a hit, when I went to France, people, they were inviting me to radio stations to sit back and talk about the record. How did you come up with it? And I'm like, wow, this is a thing. So, at a point, I guess because the sound was sort of fresh, a lot of people were really into it. But then, like I said, once you had other people starting to create records that were like ours, and next thing you knew, it started carrying a stigma to it. And I was like, okay, well, I can't really do it. But I realized in the late 90s that the gospel thing was something that was probably going to hang around with me for a minute. And yeah, here I am to this day. I'm doing pandemic praise party during the pandemic Sunday morning.
So let's get into this, because I know some people are probably watching in a time when I interviewed Jeffrey Osborne one time. We're doing a Skip Scarborough Award, and I interviewed Jeffrey. And I was like, he just gave some words on Skip, and I was like, well, how has it changed? He said, well, back in the day, we just wanted to be the best group to get the shows, because whoever the best group was got the gig at the clubs and the stuff we got to play, and whoever had the stage performance and everything. He said we weren't even thinking about radio. He said now, and this was 2006, 2007 when I interviewed him. He said now, kids are recording CDs in their house. There was no buffer. There was nothing. They recorded and they say, yeah, I'm gonna put it out. There was nothing to test it. There was nothing to show that, so by the time they hit the stage, they have nothing, because he had just performed it. I think it was wasn't Artscape, it was something, the one over at Towson, I forgot which one that was. But it was, he killed it, destroyed it. He was like, all I know is performing, and at the time he was the youngest member of LTD. But it's funny because when you look at your track record, everything's going, the music thing is there, but and the Jasper Street thing, where did you really learn the business of having a label properly? It seems like from the Girl It's True on through, you've learned enough to say, okay,
it was
this
bit
stuff
by bit by bit. Yeah, small increments, man, over the years. I mean, I started learning about the music business when we stepped into the studio the first time and had to pay for it. So
right.
And that was in 85. Now again, when you're, LTD is like what Jeffrey Osborne said is a perfect example. I mean, it's like when you first start out, you have these, sort of big dreams. And, again, my dreams have kind of started in one place, and then they developed into something else, and then they developed into something else. And then as time goes on, it develops into something else. And again, man, I never thought that I would be here, because the last thing, and I'll be honest with you, the last thing that I wanted to do was to run a record label, because I saw from a young kid how much that was just ridiculous.
Just took a lot of work, right? You saw the work ethic, or you saw the work side of it, or just the fact that it seemed like the business was convoluted?
Because the business was crooked,
right,
to me, right? I didn't want to be a guy that was in a situation where I was looked at as being the sort of crook, but as God has it, I've gone through almost every facet of being a creator, from a songwriter to a producer to a performer. And now I'm sitting with Quantize Recordings and Unquantized, and between the two labels, we've got 500 records, which means, I have to sit down twice a year and figure out who gets paid what, how do they get paid, go through all of these percentages. Like I told you, I'm an English man. I had to learn numbers, and it's like the worst thing in the world. you know, and then having to deal with, you know, what I'm going to call the unsung problem. There are a lot of artists that I deal with who feel like they should have gotten something that that they didn't get. When at the very end of the day, these are the numbers. Well, the numbers are wrong. Okay. Well, let's talk about how the numbers are wrong. And because I've been on that side of the fence, you know, I'm probably I'm probably a little more sensitive to an artist and their feelings. You know, I mean, I mean, how do you handle a situation with SWV or Tony Braxton, or was it not SWV, TLC? And, you know, they come to you and they say, well, hey, I want to buy a house. Okay, well, what do you need to buy the house? Well, I need, this house is going to cost me $1 million. Okay, well, I can't give you a check for $1 million. Why can't you give me a check for $1 million when my song sold 10 million copies?
Go through the break.
Because I paid for your costume and your travel in the limousine that you wanted from the hotel, high dollar hotel on Park Avenue that you wanted to take you. The limousine now is going to take you to your private jet. The private jet costs X amount of dollars. Now the private jet is going to take you to go rehearse with your band. Your band members have to have a certain thing, and everybody, and you want an orchestra. You just don't want a regular band. You want an orchestra. So, you know, all these things cost. Uh-oh. Troy. I think I lost him. Okay. There you go.
Just people trying to call in during the meat of the interview.
Yeah, I've had the same problem.
I want to hit that because a lot of artists to this day think that upfront money, perks, hotels, hoes, whole men, I don't know, all the stuff they want. You know what I'm saying? They think all the stuff they want comes from this huge company that just pays for them to do it, and then pays them on the money. They don't realize in their contract there's I don't know if you call it a recoup clause or whatever you call it, but the money that you spend on the artist outside the money you front, it initially comes from what the artist makes.
Right.
I think that simple fact is something that most young people, even older people in the industry, don't realize. It's the reason why the Temptations, Phil Perry, love Phil Perry, Vesta until she passed away. All these people is the reason we hear unsung and all these sad stories. All these people who you look at, the reason love the OJs. My first comedy special was opening for the OJs, but the OJs still touring in their 70s.
Yes.
It's the reason why they hit the stage and they go work and they still work because that cash money you get from performing, half of it goes.
Which is now really drastically changed in a lot of cases, Troy. A lot of people don't even understand that, you know, I mean, when, you know, they look at a standard record label deal. And what I'm saying, a standard major label classic one would probably give the artist about 18%. I think Michael Jackson probably teetered out as being one of the highest paid performers, where I think he was getting something like 20. But, you know, these are the classic record label deals. Now, what they've now done, because the industry's changed so much, is the record labels are now giving out what's called a 360 deal, which means that, okay, I'll give you, we're going to go at a 50-50 deal across the board, but that means across the board. So now, even if you are performing, the record company gets 50% of your money. See, these are the kind of deals that they're structuring now because there's not as much money on the music side. So they figured out ways to make sure that the money they put out is money that they get back. And to be honest with you, Depending on the deal, it's probably somewhat fair, because bottom line really is that the record company is taking all of the risk in doing anything. So if they're taking the risks, it's almost as if, they're giving you a loan, but this loan affords you to be able to do everything that you want to do. But yeah, man, I mean, if let's say you become a movie star out of, you getting a record deal, if the deal is structured in such a way that it's a 360-degree deal, even you going out and acting somewhere, your record company's going to get 50% of it if they are the ones that facilitated it. It's crazy.
Right. So what ends up working better on your end? Do you do more distribution deals, or do you still sign a lot of artists, or it's just the fact that you put out so much? Like you said, you may be putting out, you said you may put out 2 records, singles or extended single, because when you're dealing with dance music, and the majority of stuff you put out is dance music.
Yes.
So when you're dealing with that, there's, one song. I mean, my God, how many, I remember hearing Jerome Hicks at a party at the Kappa House the first time I heard the stripped down mix of Crystal Waters, when just singing, and when that hit the speakers, and it was like the most erotic thing I've ever heard in my life. So, but Gypsy Woman, I mean, I'm sure you can tell me songs that have more. I know for a fact, I remember seeing at least 15 different mixes for Gypsy Woman from different DJs.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, man. I mean, depending on the song, you can get, I mean, at one point, man, remixing a record was like standard, man. You could have 10 different versions of a record, but remixes help to extend, the life of a record. Or give music a platform in places where the music would normally not be heard. So yeah, I mean, remixing now is a big thing.
Right. Is it better for you, or even the person, when you sit down with somebody and you say, hey, I want to give you a deal? Do you talk about distribution versus 360 versus 360 and 50-50 deal pretty much the same thing, or?
No. It's two totally different things. Distribution is basically the channels that I'm going to use to get your record out. So whether that's Spotify or iTunes, or if you're still doing vinyl, what record shops, that kind of thing. A 360 deal would kind of it kind of supersedes that, because the deal that I make with you is you're making a deal with me because I have the keys to distribution that an average person would never be able to have.
Right.
Or would find it hard to have. I mean, these days, it's kind of like Jeffrey Osborne was saying, but even when you had that interview with him, I mean, imagine he was talking about, dudes can do music in their bedroom and then put it on a CD and sell it. Now you can do music in your bedroom and upload it and gone. It's out.
Right.
It cuts out every single solitary thing. So, as a artist, you don't even need a record label to get your music out. But the problem now becomes, if I'm just looking at let's go iTunes, for example, right? Mm-hmm. The last time I checked, and it's been a minute since I checked, but the last time I checked, a store like iTunes gets about 20 to 30,000 releases in 1 week.
Wow.
In 1 week. The reason you want to be with somebody like me is to help you cut all of the stuff out and get to a certain spot. So I'm a dance music guy. We're a dance music label. the reason you would want to sign with us is to help you to cut through the majority of things that will never make people's radar.
Right.
It's the only reason. That's it. Otherwise, you could just go and put your music up and sell it on Bandcamp or something. You know, you can do it. It's just the way that the business is right now. By all means, do it. Get it out there.
So what? No, I like this because some people don't know, and this is gonna help a lot of people in interviews, so they know to do their homework, do the stuff they do. And like I said, a lot of times the artist comes to you and they're like, "Well, I can do this, I can do that." It was like, "Well, cool. You came here broke. You can go from broke and go for broke, or you can, if you see something in someone." He was like, "Or do you recognize that partnership is pertinent to anything you're gonna do in life?"
Yeah, man. So, branding right now is it. Completely and utterly it. I work with Kelly Spencer, who has made platforms for me in a situation where I normally wouldn't even pay any attention to it. So she does the online marketing, making sure that Facebook and Instagram and all of these things, where she makes it so that I have to interact with people.
She set this up
all the time. Yes, exactly. All it gets to a point now where I don't even question it. She says, "Oh, you have an interview with Troy Rawlings at 4:00." I'm like, "What? When?" Where? And next thing you know, she comes in, she sets up everything, and things like the pandemic praise party, not my idea, it's her idea, it's her brainchild. So bottom line is that because we're a family and we're a family, we have the means by which to create things and do things for ourselves that will sort of help us to be stable in any kind of situation. And so she's creative on that side. I'm creative on the music side. She does what she does. I do what I do. We bring it all together and it works.
I love it.
It just works. But again, if it wasn't for, you could have all of these things in place. What makes all of these things possible is the DJ Spen brand. If it wasn't for DJ Spen or Quantize Recordings, for the branding aspect that we've built over the years, it's not something that I just rolled over and it just happened. And which is, another thing that I think that Jeffrey Osborne was kind of alluding to when you spoke to him. This is not just something that I rolled out of bed and just came up with yesterday morning. This is something that has been a process that's been going on since 1983. So you said you're saying at what point did I realize? I mean, there are certain points that are pivotal in me being the person that I am now, but it's all an uphill growing process from 1983.
Almost 4 decades, 37 years.
Yes.
And a lot of times you look back and people don't, everybody thinks, "Oh, that was this, that was that." Okay. So before we get out of here, because like I said, we can talk forever.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about right now?
Believe it or not, man, I am excited about where the music industry is heading right now. And I have no idea where it's going. I don't. But at this point right now, and I can say this at different steps, when vinyl gave way to CDs, it leveled the playing field somewhat. When CDs gave way to digital, it leveled the playing field even more. This is the reason why iTunes has 20,000 releases. The reason that they have it is because everybody and their mother can do it. This is not the 70s now when you have to have a big studio with a dedicated engineer for recording, a dedicated engineer for mastering, a dedicated engineer for the pressing plant. Which pressing plant am I going to? All of that kind of thing, which also all of that required that you had the means by which to do it. You don't have to do that anymore. I can go over to my laptop, I can create something and put it together and put it out. Playing field is this big old level desert.
Now this is something that people need to understand though. Because I've heard people do the plugins and all the stuff to music and make it, oh, it sounds, you hear that? You hear that? I was like, I don't hear real strings. I don't hear real drum. Right. I don't hear, those of us who are not used, the reason why, I'm nothing against trap music, but everything against trap music. The reason why I can't tell Post Malone from somebody else is like, yo, this all sounds the same to me because you're using the same equipment, the same producers going in the studio and doing whatever. But certain things in your hands, it's like we were watching the Tiny Desk the other day. I'm doing a barbecue outside. I put Tiny Desk and said, you ever heard T-Pain sing? I was talking to a bunch of people. It's like, yeah, on the auto tunes. I was like, have you heard him sing? And I put on Tiny Desk when he's singing. It was like, I didn't know he could sing. I was like, but it's also the reason why his auto tune music sounded different from everybody else's. The reason why Roger Troutman's music sounded different from Teddy Riley and everybody that came after him trying to do vocal and stuff, because they were already musicians that could already sing. Right. You sitting down with whatever programs you use to produce and creating something. Difference, or you've heard somebody create something, you can tell the difference between people who have been at it for a while and know the attributes of music, sitting there and listening, oh, that's fire. You sit back and like, I do need a horn.
Yeah. And and in this instance, I need a real horn player who can play real parts, or I need a real string player who can play real parts. Again, the same instrument in the hands of Quincy Jones versus the same instrument in the hands of a novice, whether that's a piano, whether that's a horn, whether that's a computer. No matter what it is, the same instrument in a different person's hand is going to yield you a different result. It could be the absolute same stuff, which is why it's interesting, because a lot of times we get into a situation where a lot of people, okay, yeah, well, I can do what Spen does. Let me hire his keyboard player. Or I want to hire I want to set up the same situation. I need his program with his musician and his distribution and I can do the same thing. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. You're right. Your God-given gift is your God-given gift. And regardless of, we can have the exact same tools, but it will never, ever yield the same result. It's just how it works.
I can't close on anything better than that. So we've been rocking out for over an hour. I know you got stuff to do. Let people know how to get in touch with you, how they can get the latest joints. I know you have a new joint out now. Now I'm gonna date this a little bit because I've been a Crystal Waters fan, and there's a lot of history talking about music history and her family and what she does. And I heard that you work with Crystal. Great joint. I love it. I'm a dance music. I'm a house music fan. So how can people get in touch with you?
I am again, thanks to Kelly Spencer, I am easily findable everywhere. So I believe there's a DJ Spen Wikipedia page. There are, Instagram, Facebook,
and they'll be in this. They'll be in the information.
Oh yeah, all of that stuff. The DJSpen.com, QuantizeRecordings.com. Twitter, right? Twitter.
You mentioned something. You mentioned Unquantized. What is that? Was it a new label?
Well, Unquantized is a label that we started 2 years after we started Quantize. We started Quantize in 2012, and Tommy Davis, being Tommy Davis, who he likes it raw. We couldn't do a certain kind of a thing on Quantize because it had developed this thing. So Tommy was like, okay, we got to do something different. So Oh my gosh, man! If anybody who
And I'm
knows Tommy
definitely going
Davis
to
knows,
Unquantized. All the stuff that Pork Chop, you got to be from Baltimore. No. All the stuff that Pork Chop.
yeah, exactly. So it just unquantized developed out of a desire for us to want to make sure that we covered the underground thoroughly.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because again, with some of the quantized stuff, you working, you're doing records with Barbara Tucker and Don Tallman and that sort of thing. So we wanted to make sure that we had a platform to do some of the things that that were just raw, uncut tracks and that sort of thing, which is what unquantized allows us to be able to do. And I think we're probably going to end up, we're kicking around ideas for a couple of other things now that unquantized 200 is Crystal Waters, so now it's like, okay, so if unquantized 200 is Crystal Waters, where's the raw, dirty underground stuff? So we may end up coming up with something, with something else that will hopefully be a vehicle for, even more of a different type of genre sound wise.
Now you've been doing something. I don't know how much you did before, but it seems to me before all quarantine, all this stuff. In the past 10 years, have you been traveling more than you ever have?
Maybe not in the past 10 years. I mean, the beginning of 2010ish. As God would have it, there's a lot of reasons for when I'm home.
Right.
A lot of those would be family reasons and situations like that. But man, these past 2 years, I have been traveling like it's been bananas.
Now, what
and
do you
all
think?
Of a sudden, it just came to a halt.
Right. But what do you think was was that because of EDM, or was it because of the overseas surge of house? What it was?
I think again, I think it was marketing. At the time, I had one road manager, and then I have now Katie Brock, who is another road manager, who's handling a different facet of things than my European manager. And once we really started to develop what we were doing musically, and promoting those things in such a way that people knew that I was available as a DJ. I think a lot of the problem was that people didn't know if I was available as a DJ. It's kind of a weird situation, man. But I think a lot of people really didn't know that I was available as a DJ. And then you have to think about it again. If there are thousands of records that come out in a week, imagine how many people are DJs. So just being, again, social media kind of accessible changed a lot of that. Next thing I knew, man, I was doing gigs and like, what's in Phoenix, Arizona? That's house.
And you go there and it's a crew of people.
And I go there and it's a party. Then that party was good, man. There's a guy in Phoenix that does some things, Sean Badger, and he had some stuff going on, man. It was the first time I ever played in Phoenix. So it was good. It was really, really good. And so things have literally picked up because we have we've stepped up the promotion and visibility, especially online. So it worked out well.
I love it. Thank you, brother. We gotta do it again.
Of course, man. It was a pleasure.
Yes, man. Thank you for taking time out. I'm glad I caught you because
Anytime.
it's not easy to catch DJ Spen.
No, it's not. Right. I'm like, man, I have production work to do. Who you want me to go and talk to? I'm like, okay.
And then to get him on camera was like, you're like, Troy, you sure we got to do this? I'm like, yes, brother. Yeah. So make sure you look at the information below. Get in touch with DJ Spen. See what's going on. Support all the music of Quantize recordings. Unquantized. Is it unquantized or unquantized?
It's unquantized. Yeah. So it's Quantize recordings and then unquantized. No filler, no nothing. Just unquantized.
Good stuff. Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. God bless you and the fam.
Likewise to you.
All right, talk to you soon.
To you. All right, take care, Troy.